All right, so hey everyone, thank you for coming. Let's start. So we now have a block which features two Unreal Engine presentations. So this one's going to be more of a beginner slash game jam type of a presentation, and then we'll cover more optimization and performance types of things. So welcome, TalTech GameCamp Bootcamp 2025. This is tips and tricks for jamming with Unreal Engine. So what we're going to be talking about is how to adapt Unreal Engine to game jam conditions. Also, how to save you time on making gameplay logic in Unreal Engine, because most likely you're going to be making your first or your second Unreal Engine game, and well, you only have 48 hours, so gotta be quick about it. We'll also cover which graphical settings to use, what to disable, because when you have people playing your games, like after game jam, most of that will be from laptops. So you really need to make it so that people will be able to actually run your game. And yeah, other than that, common pitfalls and just settings for actually building the game and making it as accessible for the players. So yeah, a bit about me. I'm a senior technical artist, currently working at CM Games. I've worked on 7 commercial games. 4 of them were mobile, and the last 3 were VR titles made with Unreal Engine 4 and 5. So yeah, as Alex said, I have participated and mentored 4 game jams, and like usually, as a technical artist, I'm doing stuff like performance optimization, writing shaders, making tools for artists, making procedural art, and also doing visual effects. So just a bunch of stuff, working with many systems of Unreal. So yeah, why this topic? Well, really, I feel that Unreal is a great engine, but it's hardly being used for game jams. Like last time, we had 56 games, if I remember correctly, and only like 2 or 3 out of those were made with Unreal. So basically, like people choose Godot, people choose Unity because they are smaller and like just faster to access, but not necessarily more accessible for a beginner to use. So with Unreal, for example, you don't need like coding skills. You can use blueprints. So like in theory, it could be even a better option. But well, it's made for bigger games as well. Sometimes it feels like navigating a boat. So you really need to shrink it down to make it also better for game jams. And yeah, even pros face the same issues, really, and I'm gonna use this talk as a bit of a retrospective, because the first time we participated at a game jam, it was with my colleagues, who also are making games for a long time. And we thought that when we would be making a game on a game jam, like it would be a walk in the park. It would be easy, because we already know what we're doing. But reality was a bit different, and turned out that making a game jam game is really different to making a real commercial project. So we really stumbled upon some issues which I will try to cover in this talk. And also this is our game. By the way, it's Quantum Darkness, so it's from a year ago, also from TalTech GameCamp, and it got 4th place. It was about Quantum Dark trying to escape the underground lab and fighting viruses while doing that. So let's jump in. And first topic I'm going to cover is just the engine size. So basically, when you come to the venue, especially, and you don't have an engine prepared beforehand, well, you should have it downloaded beforehand. But, well, if you don't have it, then like Unreal is heavy. Just 60 gigabytes and stuff. You might not have enough space on your hard drive, and also, many people using the Wi-Fi, so it could be slow, so could really spend a lot of time downloading it. But one thing you can do about it is to at least set it up in a way where you wouldn't use other target platforms, because you really only need Windows, so you can disable Android, Linux, and just save yourself a lot of time and space. Other stuff you can disable is actually the starter content, because even if you disable the starter content, you can still use the content that comes with the plugins, which come with Unreal. So even then you will have your basic cubes, like a basic skeletal mesh as well, and that will also save you like a gigabyte or two. And of course that will reduce the size like roughly by half. Other stuff is, of course, just the final build size. When you have the game ready, you need to build it. And one of the issues which we faced was that, yes, we submitted the build, but when we looked at the size of the build, like compared to other projects, ours was 600 megabytes, which was like the heaviest game on the jam. And the issue with that is that, players, when they download the game, they don't really want to wait that much. And if they are playing like 20 games and downloading all of that, they might also run out of space, or they might not even wait. As we've said, like Wi-Fi can be a bit slow when many people use it. So what you can do about it is you can go into your project settings, into packaging, and there be sure to actually add the maps that you have into the list of maps to include in a packaged build. So for us, it was the start screen, also the game map. Well, our game only had a single level, so there's that, and the end screen. And basically then it will cook content only like inside of those levels, and also the blueprints and stuff, while not really cooking anything that's not being used. And with that out of the way, you can also go into your plugins, and in there, Epic have just a bunch of stuff enabled by default. So what you can do is disable some of this stuff. I have it lined up. These are the more like weighty ones, and you can definitely just disable them because, well, you won't be really using them. Like Open Image Denoiser is like for path tracing. Those like neural network stuff are for like ray tracing and stuff. So Interchange is an import-export library, but that's an additional thing. And MetaSound, it's a fancy sound system, but you will still have sounds even without it. So by disabling those plugins, you save about 80 megabytes from your final package size. So in our case, well, the original build was like 600 megabytes, but like with just those like two things taken care of, it shrank 3 times. And like at this point with 200 megabytes, you won't really notice the difference between that and like any other Unity game, pretty much. So be sure to pay attention to it. Now moving on to game logic and stuff like that. Overall, be sure to start from a template. Do not start from an empty project. So you can have a first-person template, a first-person top-down vehicle. Like doesn't really matter. Like even if you're not gonna use like all of the functionality in there, but at least you get your player character, and then it is much easier to just add your stuff like inside of that pre-existing blueprint and to enhance its functionality than to like do things from scratch, watch YouTube tutorials, then like wonder why it doesn't work. At least you get a bit of a leg up when you're starting things, because you already have something running. Other stuff is, of course, with like animations. Basically, Unreal has 2 main ways to add animations to your game logic. One of which is level sequencer, but it's tied to a specific level. It's more for like daytime cycles and like ambient animations and such. While I would really advise to use timelines inside specific blueprints. And why is that? Really, by default, you have like 2 main events, which are begin play, which just fires when the level has been loaded and the game starts, and tick, which just runs every frame. And like usually you would animate things inside of a tick so that it would actually like change every frame, but it will only like allow you to do linear stuff. And with more artistic things, it's a bit a pain in the ass to like do that. So timelines are much better for that. You just add it, you tie it to an event, you call the timeline, and then it doesn't need tick because it will update by itself. You can set its length, you can animate floats, colors, vectors, and also fire additional events while it runs. And then you just tie your gameplay logic to update or to finished, so then it will fire when it stops playing. And you can also have like multiple timelines inside of a blueprint and play them in reverse as well. Just be sure to play them from start, because otherwise they will just play once. Speaking of stuff like sounds, stuff like particle systems, you really need to use them inside your GameCamp project. So you can combine those events and timelines and tie those update timelines to this. So with spawn system or spawn zone attached, basically you use them for attaching to an enemy or the player character, basically anything which would need to move after your sound or your particle system has been spawned. And of course with spawn at location or spawn zone at location, well, it's just more ambient environmental for things which would not need to move from that point onwards. And it's just more convenient to use this and spawn them like that, because it's more of a fire and forget type of approach. You can set your particles to be auto-activated and auto-destroyed. So this way, you don't really need to handle their lifetime, and you can have much more particles if you also enable pooling for them. So it's just a more convenient way to use them. With sound, also there is a spawn sound 2D. Basically, it's used for 2D sounds like a user interface or just your idle music. So also just a neat way to do that. Other stuff like making triggers, basically zones, which would detect stuff if something entered inside of them. It's like just a box collision inside of a blueprint, and then you can have events on your right side. So the easiest way to do that logic is to just press plus there, get your event out, and then on component begin overlap or end overlap, basically it will fire and detect which actors have entered inside, and you can have it compare other actor property with, for example, your player character. So, and if it's right, then do stuff like fire particles, for example, which we discussed before. So by doing those blueprints and setting them up across the level, you can just get your basic logic running. So moving on to visuals, when you start a new empty level, it's a bit of an inconvenience to get that basic lighting setup going. And you don't really want to start from landscape sample, for example, because then you would need to actually disable and delete all the unneeded actors and stuff inside the level. So best way to do that is to get environment light mixer. And it has these convenient buttons for making the skylight, making your height fog, making the atmosphere. So you just press everything there. Maybe not press the create volumetric clouds. You don't really need them. But yeah, that will allow you to get your basic light setup in just a couple of seconds. And then you can place all your other stuff inside the level. And then set it up from there. Other things for visuals is, of course, use a post-processing volume. So you just drag it onto a level, and then if you set it to unbound, it will have infinite extents, so it will cover the whole level. So with it, you can disable rendering features, and you can also, of course, stylize your output to be color-corrected, to change other rendering values, to have it more dark or more interesting to look at, basically, to stylize in a way you would want. Of course, you can also have multiple post-processing volumes in your scene and blend between them, or disable and enable them if you have different conditions inside your game. Moving on to performance, basically, first thing you need to do when you would be making a game with an Unreal Engine is to go to project settings, to rendering, and just disable all the defaults, because Epic really loves nanite, but you don't really need it for a game jam game. So just go inside and disable nanite, change shadow map method from virtual shadow maps to just basic shadow maps. For global illumination, just disable it completely. And for reflection method, you can turn lumen off and replace it with screen space reflections. This way, you would have a much larger player base, basically, and you won't need worry about working with a nanite pipeline, but you will just be working with the default legacy pipeline. So yeah, other stuff for performance is to definitely add call distance volume inside your level. So basically, this volume handles the calling of objects, so that you wouldn't need to set it up by yourself for every object. And how it works is you just drag it and make it really big, and then you add pairs of call distances. So basically, it has size, which is the approximate size of the object, and then it has a call distance, so the distance at which the object should be called. And by default, Unreal always has this thing where 100 is the centimeters, so every 100 is a meter, so 4,000 is 40 meters, so just be mindful of that. That's why the values are this big. And then, of course, when you have less objects to render, it runs better. And one other thing is if you have many lights inside your scene and you really need to go over them quickly, there is also a light mixer window, which if you enable, you can see every single light and also their properties. And basically, in the header, if you do a right-click on it, you can also add additional properties. So in here, I also added cast shadows, because shadows are really performance intensive. So you should be mindful of that and disable shadows from most of the smaller lights and just have them on for the most, big, more noticeable lights in your scene. You can also lower the radius of the lights so that they would overlap less, because when they overlap, that's the more expensive part. And also be sure to set your lights to static so that the shadows, if the light has shadows, would be cached. While also, really this goes for every single geometry in your level. So everything which doesn't need to move should have its mobility set to static, and only your enemies, player character, and other entities which would be dynamic should also be movable. So that's the overall gist of it. One more thing is working with configs. So Unreal has this thing called CVARs, which are console variables. And basically, what you can do with them is quickly set up different settings, while not really looking where they are, in which config they are. So here, there's this trick where if you just type in the setting without setting any value to it, it will tell you what is the current value, and also it will tell you the last set by parameter. And then here we have the max cascaded shadow map resolution, which is set by scalability. We have the mobile ambient occlusion, which is set by project setting, and the nanite set by constructor. So what do these mean? Basically, they mean that shadows in this example are set by scalability settings and presets. So you can have different scalability settings for low, medium, high, and graphics. So in that case, the variable shadow quality changes this setting. While if it's set by project setting, it basically means that it's every single ini config file in your project. Usually it's default game and default engine ini. And also, if you change something from project settings, those configs are the ones which get updated. And if it's set by constructor, then it's just your default value inside of Unreal. So it basically means that nothing is being overridden, and Epic just have nanite enabled by default inside the engine itself. So if you really need to quickly change those things, the quickest way to do that is to go into your config folder inside the project, and then you open the default engine ini, and then you will find every single setting from the project settings. So you can tweak those quickly, and also add whatever you need inside of that, so that when you actually reload the project, it will also update. And then you can use that setting again to check if it actually changed or not. All right, so that's the gist of it. And if you have questions, I'm ready to answer. Sure.
Usually when people are recommended to thing with which you start writing your game to not use like this. I don't know what's the regular code even of Unreal, but usually they recommend Blueprint. That if you start like writing anything, you just start using Blueprint. But what's the alternative? Like, what's the other thing?
Yeah, you would usually use blueprints, or you would use C++, or you would use blueprints and C++ together. And actually, that's the way most projects are done. It's just that C++ might be more of a more intense language for beginners. Yeah, sure. One more question.
Yeah, some like creators with Unreal that have, I don't know, good tutorials, good materials, anything.
One really great channel I can recommend is Prismatica Dev. Basically, he's making his own game and is focusing it also around interactions and shaders. And also, he is a plugin developer, so that channel I can really recommend because I've been using it for a while. One other, if you are more into like TechArt focused things, for example, would be TechArt 8. That one also has like full-length tutorials on making tools and such. So that could be beneficial to really get into those more complicated systems. Yeah. Yep, one more question. Question was how easy it is to reuse gameplay logic between projects in Unreal. So usually your logic is split between Blueprint actors and Blueprint components. So usually Unreal has this feature where you just migrate different objects between projects. And when you do that migrate option, it actually carries every single hard reference which that set class has. And that's like the way you usually do things. So you will just migrate it from one project to the other. Issue is if you have hard references. So for example, you have a blueprint and then it points to a mesh, right? With migrate, what happens is that class will also migrate that mesh, but that mesh will also migrate its material, but that material will also migrate its textures. So that can be a bit messy, and that's like the harder part of it. But if you're just migrating code, like Blueprint components, for example, they're a bit of a modular way to do that, and usually it's not a big problem unless you have actual like C++ code and it's like referenced between multiple entities, basically. So if your inventory system, for example, is tied to a player character, it would be hard to migrate without that player character. But if it's made in a more abstract way, then you should have less issues. More questions, yes.
Adding videos in Unreal Engine framework.
Adding videos is actually quite simple. There's like a separate class for it. So really, you shouldn't have many issues with that because Unreal overall is being used for virtual production as well. So there's like a whole suite of stuff for that as well. And there is also lots of like motion effects available for that kind of workflow. So it's relatively simple. One question in the chat. All right, so the question is, what is my take on market being saturated by cheap and poorly optimized Unreal Engine 5 games, and what can be done about that? Well, we can see that many studios are switching to Unreal, and I think it is for the industry like a so-so thing, because this way we lose many like studio-independent engines, but the engine by itself can be used optimally, like when you are sharing the knowledge and you are sharing the best practices about using it, then well, there's more of a possibility that people will actually use it. The issue with poorly optimized and cheap is always more with the actual like deadlines and game productions getting like really weird and convoluted. So with just the engine, I don't think there's like as many problems and issues. You can definitely use it and make great games with it, and there have been many examples of that. And really with any engine. All right, we have one more hand. All right, so the question was, what could I recommend to avoid the cheap default Unreal Engine look? And my answer would always be to actually have your game be unique and stylize it in a way where it would be recognizable. So if we're not just talking about engine, but more of a product and game design point of view, then you should always aim for this thing where if a player sees a screenshot of your game, it should be instantly recognizable as that exact game. And I think that's like one of the issues with projects that were mentioned in the question. And basically, if you don't do that, if you don't pay any attention to your art style in general, well, it's going to have the default art style of Unreal, which is like realistic and basically combination of Lumen, Nanite, and TA. So yeah, it's more of a you paying attention to your own project and having it be unique and changing all the defaults so that it would actually be unique and fit for your needs. Yes, more questions.
Is it possible to integrate AI functionality with this framework?
There have been tests, and I think Epic has showcased multiple presentations for that. So AI, for example, has been used for tests and prototypes of post-processing effects, where you would have it trained to mimic a specific style. You would input a frame, and it would let out an edited post-processed frame with AI. But at this point, it's not running at speeds which would allow to use it like anytime soon. So like in context of a GameCamp project, it would probably not work well. Right, so I think we don't have more questions. Thank you.